Alex, I feel like even though that was your talking point, I kind of want to hand back to you. And I want, if it's okay with you, to talk through from lap 52 all the way through to 58, because you're very impartial, you're very methodical, you're very, unbiased. And I as much as I try to say I'm unbiased, I probably won't come across as being unbiased. So do you want to take us through the last 6 laps and you talk to us about what you feel was okay and all strange, or whether you thought it was all okay under the governing body, or whether you thought some things were a little bit odd, and what's your thoughts and opinions? And then I'll chime in as and when with my thoughts.
Well, I'm very flattered by your description. I don't think I would describe myself as impartial or unbiased. I just have different biases.
More unbiased than I.
Yeah. Well, firstly, did we really expect consistency at the end of the season that we just had?
No. Yeah.
I think that the season has ended as it has been throughout. I was going to make a big list, but I'm going to. I honestly just kind of couldn't be asked, because it's such a big list of things where things that have happened where you think this doesn't make any sense. It clearly is it says in the rules they're supposed to do this, or rules or no rules. It makes sense if the race director has some kind of authority in this position. It seems like the decision is obvious to everyone except the people that are actually making the decision.
Yeah.
Or nobody's been paying attention, etc., etc. So the whole season has been like that. For it to end that way, I must admit that I spent the last few laps basically just laughing in disbelief because of how ridiculous it was. It was pretty farcical, but incredibly entertaining. I was thoroughly entertained by the end of this
Netflix will
race.
be loving this.
Yeah, they probably. I mean, they can't dramatize it anymore. At least they don't really need to fake anything this time.
Yes,
because
yes.
What would you need to fake?
You've got everything.
Yeah, the truth is stranger than fiction in this case, I suppose. I'm actually more annoyed that Norris had to pit again. Otherwise, he might have been on that podium instead of Sainz. If I'm annoyed about anything about the end of the race, it's that. But anyway, a couple of important things to do with this then. So, I do think that Michael Massey did the right thing to avoid the race ending under a safety car. I think that was a good thing, because if the championship had ended under a safety car, that's just such a pathetic way to finish any race, really. I would even go as far to say that I don't think it should even be possible for a race to finish under the safety car, apart from inclement weather conditions, perhaps. But the idea that a race can finish under a safety car is just pathetic. I think, considering what was at stake, what they should have done is just immediately red flag the session.
Yes.
And just have a 5-lap sprint to the end.
Yes.
I mean, what a good advert for sprint races as well.
Yes,
if that's what they want to go ahead with.
Absolutely.
And because of the silly rules, everyone can change their tyres. So you get this, back to the beginning again. And it would have been epic. That in itself. I mean, that in itself is a manipulation. That word has been used a lot in regards to this thing. But that in itself is a manipulation. I would argue that every safety car is a manipulation of the race results, because you're taking the race and you're pushing all the cars together in a completely fabricated fashion for the sake of safety. So, I think that there's a lot of manipulation that goes on in the part of the race for various necessary reasons. And that doing the red flag and having that sprint at the end is one way that you might have done it. It certainly seems like it might have been a more fair and probably certainly more exciting way as well. But, I think that would have been the best option, but it wasn't what happened. It wasn't what we saw. What we saw was far more confusing and bizarre, and maybe even a little bit embarrassing. First, let's talk about the other hypothetical alternative outcomes that we might have seen, because we could have seen them keep all of the cars that were lapped stay in their original positions, and Verstappen would have had to have get past, was it 5 cars?
It was 5 cars, yep.
5 cars. So he would have had to get past 5 cars, but they all would have immediately received blue flags.
Under blue flags, yeah.
Now, it seems to me that the people in those cars probably would have got jumped out of the way pretty quickly, considering the circumstances. It's also possible that they would have had 1 extra lap if they'd done that as well, I think, maybe. I can't remember exactly how it happened, but they might have had 1 extra lap as well. But I think it's possible that, given that Verstappen had the softer tyres and was clearly very fast in that situation, and those cars would have gotten out of the way, I think he might have still got Hamilton,
Yeah, I agree.
even if he'd had to get past those cars. So if they'd left it as it was, it might have still ended in that fashion. Because of the way the safety car compresses everyone together.
Those 5 cars would have been overtaken by the newly laid turn 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Basically the old chicane, which is now like just almost like a hairpin, but quite a wide one going in section.
They would have got right out the way, wouldn't they?
I reckon
they'd
by
be on the blower saying, "There's Max Verstappen, right? Get out the way! It's the last bit of the race."
They would have driven off the track to get out of the way, and I reckon Max would have been ahead of those cars by the start of the first DRS straight.
So it seems to me that even if they were there, Verstappen still might have taken the lead of the race. That might have seen a slightly more reasonable way for him to take the championship, but it's not what we saw. Another hypothetical outcome is that, of course, they could have got all of the lapped cars to move out of the way, and that way the race would have finished almost certainly under the safety car. I understand that all of the teams agreed that they didn't want that, and Michael Massey was quite determined to follow that understanding. Obviously, they agreed that before the circumstances that we saw, but Michael Massey seemed pretty determined to follow that, and I do think that's the good call. Like, to finish it under the safety car just seems pathetic. Now, what did they do? Well, they obviously asked only the cars that were between Hamilton and Verstappen to be unlapped. And a lot of people have been, posting screenshots of the rules and saying, look, it says this and you have to do that. And this is what the rules say. And it's all to do. I mean, I'm not going to read the rules out because if you've probably seen them by now if you've been going on Twitter and reading all this stuff. It's all to do with, there's like, it's like 43 point something. I don't know the exact ones that it is. But it's all to do with when cars may overtake and when overtaking will not be permitted and all the rest of it. The only outs that I can see in the rules in those specific bits to do with the safety car that they might have drawn on is something like, if they consider the track conditions are unsuitable for overtaking, they can deliver the message overtaking will not be permitted. And that maybe gives them some technical leeway to only allow certain cars to overtake. There's also 48.8 where it says that with the exception of the cases listed under 8H below, no driver may overtake another car on the track, including the safety car, until he passes the line, see Article 5.3, for the first time after the safety car has returned to the pits. And the exceptions are, and I only need to list the first one because it's the only one that's relevant, which is if a driver is signalled to do so from the safety car. And that's exactly what happened. They put on the little green light that allows the person behind them to overtake, and then they can presumably just turn it off again and not allow the next person to overtake as a result. But I think the important one, and it is the one that they mentioned in the steward's notes, or this is their justification, if you like. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't tell you whether this is going to hold up in the Court of Appeal or whatever, but the one that they seem to draw on is to do with 15.3, which is not about the safety car, but about the officials themselves, but about Michael Massey and the clerk of the course and all this sort of wording. But it basically says that the race director has overriding authority in the following matters, and that the clerk of the course can give orders in respect to them only with his express permission or express agreement. Now, it lists 5 matters in which the race director has overruling authority, and the first 3, which are to do with the control of practice in the race and the timetable, stopping any cars, and stopping of any session and race and basically like that. They all use the wording in accordance with the code or sporting regulations. But the last 2 are simply listed the starting procedure and the use of the safety car. And they don't mention having to do it in accordance with the code or sporting regulations. So the wording there suggests, and this is merely an interpretation because very often that is what one has to do when you look at sporting rules. You interpret them rather than see them as cold, hard facts. Many of these are interpretations. That seems to suggest that when it comes to the use of the safety car, Michael Massey can do basically whatever he likes. Now, is that the right decision? Should the rules be written that way? No, I don't think that they should be. I think that's pretty vague and, gives him a lot of power, a lot of authority. It gives one person the ability to do a bit too much. And I understand the need for flexibility. I understand the need but the rules cannot be written to take into account every single possible scenario. The only way you could write perfectly fixed, objective rules is to be able to see the future. Because sport is unpredictable. Strange things happen. It's very difficult to write rules where you can account for everything. So usually it helps to have one person who can just make a decision in that scenario. So I understand the need for that. But in terms of the use of the safety car, that's super vague. But that's, I think, what they're using to say, well, actually, Michael Massey can do what he likes in regards to the safety car. So, in summary, I don't agree that they broke the rules because the rules technically say that Michael Massey can do what he wants with the safety car. That's my interpretation. Maybe we can talk in a little bit about what we think the rules should be and how they should change and how they might look differently in next year. But Shane, I'll turn over to you for your interpretation of the events.
So this is why I wanted you to talk first, because actually listening to you is like just settled me down ever so slightly, and it's just good to listen to what I think is an impartial decision. Obviously, you find all the facts, and
I still think it's stupid as hell.
It is.
I still think they made the worst possible decision that upset everybody apart from Red Bull and Red Bull fans.
Yeah, I mean, let's
I don't think
this.
they broke the rules. I think technically the rules gives them the leeway to do whatever the hell they like, unfortunately.
So, I agree. They didn't break the rules. Is what they did correct? I don't think so whatsoever. Only allowing 5 cars through, I thought, was really strange because actually Daniel Ricciardo, it's never happened before, but Daniel Ricciardo was one of the biggest losers today other than Lewis Hamilton. All the lap cars in front of him were allowed to unlap themselves on lap 57. Daniel was one of the drivers who took the advantage of the safety car and boxed for a fresh set of softs. So actually under what we usually see from a safety car experience, Daniel Ricciardo is in a really good position on a fresh set of soft tyres. He could have made some moves going into the final lap. But he was denied that opportunity because actually all the cars ahead of him were able to unlap themselves, which was strange. Strange for him, he mentioned on the radio, and just a strange set of circumstances because I've only been watching Formula 1 for 12, 13 years, but I've not seen that before. And I'm going to ask you, have you seen a certain amount of certain amount of cars being able to unlap themselves at any point, or is it usually all or none?
No, I've never seen that happen before, not that I can remember. I've never seen those specifics. Because they did specifically say these cars to overtake, which to their credit, they were specific. They didn't say overtake and then suddenly say, no, don't stop overtaking the safety car. They did list specifically which cars they wanted to do it. Felt a bit sorry for Sainz because it meant that he wasn't in a position to potentially battle for P2 because there were still lap cars in front of him. But whether or not he really would have done that, I don't know. But yeah, it's a weird one. It's a
strange set of circumstances which we haven't been presented with before for as long as we can remember. And collectively, we've been watching for Formula 1 for probably 15 to 20 years now. And, there's a lot of people who've been watching it a lot longer and haven't seen these circumstances. Having a finite amount of cars unlap themselves to bring the two championship contenders to bring them together. That was the objective, was to bring those two cars together. And I feel sorry for those lap cars because it's not like they could drive around and get back to the back of the pack and all form up in line. They were fighting themselves on that last lap. And like you said, people were out of position. A lot of people were denied an opportunity to fight for Constructor Championship points, even though they had boxed for a fresh set of soft tyres, Daniel Ricciardo being one of the biggest losers. So let's just run through what happened. At 18, this is all in local time, by the way, local to Abu Dhabi. So at 18:27, a message pops up saying lap cars will not be allowed to overtake. Everyone's on the same field. Everyone's got the same message. It comes up on everyone's dash. It comes up on the pit wall. The engineers are communicating it with their drivers. Everyone's all squared away. Christian Horner gets on the radio, and I'm sure Toto Wolff is on the radio at the same time. But Christian Horner says, Michael, we just need one lap without lap cars. And that was at 18:29. So 2 minutes after a message came up about cars not being able to overtake. Do apologise. 18:31, a message pops up saying lap cars between Lewis and Max, 5 cars only, are allowed to pass. And it details specifically what cars by the number of their car. And then also on 18:31, safety car in this lap. So what I found almost as strangely interesting is we've always had lap cars can unlap themselves and then they go round, they join up the back, and then the safety car, once those cars have joined up, will then tail in that lap. A lap later is mentioned in the regulations. But of course, this ultimate clause where the race director has complete control over the safety car completely mitigates what we know and expect previously in previous races. But those lap cars drove past the safety car, and then it was within 10 seconds. This is all happening in Sector 3. the safety car was going to peel in this lap. So of course that was unusual. Like, we were expecting to have, obviously we were looking to have one more lap of racing, but these special set of circumstances towards the end of this race we haven't really seen before. And I think that's what's aggravated a lot of people, and especially the teams as well, because we've come to expect the safety car to peel in a lap after the lap cars have gone through, as it mentions in the regulations. We expect all cars to be let through, as it mentions in the regulations. But obviously everyone missed the fact that actually this clause, which you mentioned earlier, Michael Massey, the race director, is in complete control of the safety car. And yes, I agree. It shouldn't have ended on a yellow lap, on a safety car lap. What the answer was, maybe they should have unlapped all the cars to begin with. Maybe they should have red flagged the race to begin with. Maybe they should have done a virtual safety car, so all the time deficit all the time made up was all the same. I don't know, but it was just, it's hard.
It's that they changed their minds as well. That's the other thing, is that they said no one's going to overtake. Actually, these specific cars should overtake, and it just contributed to the ridiculous and slightly unprofessional nature of that whole thing.
And I think that's what bugs a lot of people, that actually those last 3 laps, those last 4 minutes, we've gone from not allowing any cars to overtake to then only a certain amount of cars being able to overtake. Those cars not being able to catch up to the back of the pack, and then a safety car coming in immediately at the end of that lap, allowing a final racing lap. It's something we haven't seen before. It's something we didn't expect to happen, because we all know what the safety car procedure is. We all, they don't have to allow the cars to overtake if it's not safe to do so. That's not within the rules. What we've come to expect is either all the cars or none of the cars. And it was just because it was different. Yes, I agree it was in the rules. Was it within the sporting? Was it sporting to do what he did or do what happened? I don't think so. I would have rather seen Max personally go fly past those 5 lap cars, catch Lewis on the second DRS straight. Both of them have an absolute ding-dong battle into turn 9, and then one of them goes off into the third sector and wins the championship. That would have been amazing. But it was just how... It's a shame that it ended in such a way where it almost was kind of forced. It felt like... you'd have to be blind if you said that Mercedes didn't look like the stronger car for the last 10 laps. They were 14 seconds ahead.
It was going to be forced no matter what. It was going to be forced no matter what, because Latifi's crash meant that there had to be a safety car. So then whatever you do next is going to be forced, because you've either got to make... Michael Massey and the people with him must have realised that they were essentially deciding who was going to be world champion. Now,
because you're pitting Max Verstappen on one lap fresh soft tyres against Lewis Hamilton on 40 old lap hard tyres.
Which leads me to think maybe they didn't even consider the red flag option. Maybe they didn't even think of doing that. I don't. Who knows what goes on in the room that they're in? But
ironically,
go on. Well, it's just a matter of it being just being forced no matter what. Because if, let's say, they'd done a red flag, I mean that's pretty forced, isn't it? You're just they didn't need a red flag. It wasn't necessary for there to be a red flag.
Each team an equal opportunity. And I've been dead against red flags, and how I find this completely insane that last week on the podcast I was talking about how cars shouldn't be allowed to change their tyres under red flag. And now this week I'm talking about actually they should have thrown a red flag. They should have allowed Mercedes and Red Bull to box, put a fresh set of tyres on, and just have a sprint race towards the end. I can't believe how I changed my opinion in a matter of 8 days.
But I mean, I'd still see that rule changed.
Yeah,
tyres or no tyres, just a 5-lap sprint at the end would have been better. That would have been the best sort of possible outcome, I think.
It just wasn't the ending anyone was expecting, and it was a shame that it ended in such a way where it was unusual for the race director. It was just created. It was just fabricated. It just felt like it was forced. It felt like the racing was gone, and it was more for the drama. This was perfect for advertising. This is perfect for TV series. This is perfect for the books and the montages, because it was the final lap, the final race, or the final corner. The 2 championship contenders go against it. And I think, well, actually, 2008 was pretty epic, and that was all authentic. This felt like it was forced. And I would have loved it if Max had won. And when he crossed the line and won, I was like, you know what? I had a little grin on my face. I thought, he has been the better driver this year. He has outperformed that Mercedes. He probably would have won it a race or two ago if it hadn't been for Hungary and Silverstone and Monza. But I just felt like a little bit cheated. Like Lewis had no leg to stand on because it was just strange. It was a strange set of circumstances, and I really hope those set of circumstances don't appear again in Formula One because it really took the shine out of the day for me.
You think Michael Massey just?
I think he'll end up quitting.
Well, do you think though at the time that he just had enough? I got the tone of his voice. I mean, this is just my interpretation of it, but I just got the sense that he was just totally fed up. And at the end, when Toto was like, this isn't right, you've got to do such and such or whatever. And Michael Massey was like, we went motor racing.
Oh yeah, but I know we didn't go motor racing. Like we didn't go motor racing.
That's so funny.
I hated that. Like, I hated hearing Toto on the radio and like begging like a child.
Michael, no.
No safety car. No safety car. All this stuff, even from the beginning of the race. But I can't defend.
I just found the whole thing hilarious. I got to say, I just thought it was hilarious.
I hated it. I absolutely hated it. From cars not being able to overtake to Christian Horner saying we just need one lap without lap cars. 2 minutes later, all the lap cars between him and Lewis had disappeared, and then the safety car came in on that lap. It just felt like it was orchestrated, and Lewis never stood a chance.
It's called a motor race, Shane.
It's not called a motor race.
We went motor racing. It's a car race. That's what we did.
I can't believe I've agreed to not talk about this after this podcast.
We went motor racing.
I can't let it go. I can't let it go. It just kills me inside that.
And then there's an image that somebody posted. There's an image that somebody posted of him leaving as well after it. He's literally just got his suitcase. He's just off. He's had enough. I've had enough of this.
Red Bull's
nonsense.
money and Red Bull. It's just, oh man, it was such a strange way to end the season. Words do not describe how that's come about.
Let's move on. I think let's talk about what we want to see change for next year. Then